Hello, I am taking on a challenge to beat every playable Nintendo-published video game. The next game is Famicom Detective Club Part 2, The Girl Who Stands Behind. Well, after 4 weeks in a row covering the launch of the Game Boy, it's time to take a break and return to Nintendo's adventure games on the Famicom Disk System. Before starting this challenge, most of these games are untranslated, but Sudgy, my brother and friend of the channel, has been creating translation scripts for me so that I can play them. These aren't your standard English patches, they are instead done with a Lewis script. They're a bit more involved to get working, but I'll still put a link in the description to Sudgy's GitHub if you want to try them out for yourself. Thanks again to Sudgy for being such a big help in this challenge. So, Famicom Detective Club is back, huh? Yep, out of the 3 adventure games I've played so far, Famicom Detective Club was the first to get a sequel, and it released about a year after the first one. Once again, Yoshio Sakamoto was the main mastermind behind the story, with help from others at Nintendo R&D 1. However, there was one big change this time around. For the first game, Sakamoto was working with a rough outline provided by Tosei, a shadow developer that worked on occasion with Nintendo. However, Sakamoto wasn't completely satisfied with the scenario of the first game, as he thought the story of a dead old lady was kinda boring. This time, he really wanted to make the story his own. Sakamoto loves ghost stories, and many ghost stories in Japan are set in schools. This served as the primary inspiration for the story, resulting in Sakamoto deciding to make the game a prequel, set when the main character of the first game was a teenager. Humorously, the devs even joked that the development of the game was cursed with some ghost stories of their own. One time, one of the devs hit his head on an underpass near the Nintendo building. He was bleeding without even realizing it, and his co-worker said that it looked like he was crying blood. Another time, Sakamoto himself was working late when the light suddenly turned off and he heard ominous footsteps behind him. Sakamoto thought he was about to meet his end. It turns out a security guard cut the lights without realizing anyone was there, and the footsteps were simply just another co-worker who was bumbling around after the lights went out. Anyway, another big focus for Sakamoto this time around was the music. Sakamoto has said that when it comes to horror, he prefers suspenseful build-up more than graphic content, so he worked closely with the game's composer, Kenji Yamamoto, to make the sound effects and music enhance the story. There's one scene in particular where they employed some sneaky tactics to build up to a dramatic moment, but I don't want to spoil that part yet, so you'll just have to wait to hear more details. Like the first game, The Girl Who Stands Behind released in 2 parts, and the game's life didn't end on the Famicom Disk System either. Unlike the first game, The Girl Who Stands Behind was remade for the Super Famicom. While I'm not entirely sure why only the second game was ported, from what I can gather online, more people seem to prefer the second game, although it's hard to find any concrete sales information. Like the first game, however, The Girl Who Stands Behind also got a remake on the Switch, where it was made available in English for the first time. Today, though, we're just taking a look at the game's original Famicom Disk System release. Alright, with all that history out of the way, let's jump into my time with Famicom Detective Club Part 2, The Girl Who Stands Behind. The game opens with a scene showing how the main character met Utsugi, his guardian. While the main character was being chased by the police late at night, Utsugi showed up and decided to help the main character get out of trouble. Utsugi could somehow tell that the main character was separated from his parents and was looking for them. Utsugi revealed that he was a detective, and he offered the main character a place to stay. The game then had me enter my name, and from here on out, the game was in first person. Because it wasn't practical to implement the name selection with the Lewis script, Sudgy just hard-coded the name Schmoby Dude into the game. My character then said that he became Utsugi's assistant, and the rest of the game's events followed soon after. Then the screen turned black, and it told the tale of the girl who stands behind. When you are alone at school, you hear someone calling from behind. Turning around, you see a lone girl standing there. A lonely girl looking like she wants to say something standing behind you. Scary, I guess? After a title drop, the main story began. Utsugi received a phone call. The corpse of a high school girl had been found at a riverbed near the edge of town. So, like the first game, the main gameplay involves a bunch of menu options and investigating the screen. I asked the police officer some questions, but he didn't provide a whole lot of info. I tried to nab the body and run off, but the police wouldn't let me. Yeah, no surprises there. After investigating the scene, I found a notebook, and inside was her student ID. It appears the girl's name was Yoko Kojima, and she was a first year at a place called Ushimitsu High School. Then, the forensic officer arrived and asked me to help investigate the body. At first, I didn't find anything suspicious, but after looking at her neck, I found indications that she had been strangled. Looks like we've got a murder case in our hands. Suddenly, a girl arrived at the scene, and she apparently knew Yoko. A man named Hibino showed up too, and this guy was Yoko's homeroom teacher. Both seemed distraught, but Hibino looked especially pale. I then went back to Utsugi's office, where we decided that I was going to be the one investigating the high school. I guess since I was a teen myself, they figured I was the right guy for the job. The girl from before suddenly arrived and she revealed that she was Ayumi Tachibana, a close friend of Yoko. Now, if you didn't already know, Ayumi was a character in the first game. She was another detective that worked alongside the main character at the Sudgy detective agency. I guess this prequel explains how we met. Ayumi explained that she and Yoko made a group at school called the Detective Club. Oh, I guess that finally explains the title of the series. Yoko had apparently been investigating something recently, and she was starting to act strange, almost like an entirely separate person. After this, Itsugi told me to go to Yoko's house to investigate. There, I met Yoko's mother. At first, she didn't have a whole lot to say, other than that Yoko started to go on more walks recently. However, she eventually told me about a strange dream that Yoko had about a week ago. In this dream, Yoko was at school and heard a voice call from behind her. Then, after turning around, she saw that the girl was covered in blood, and the bloody girl called for help. Instead of being scared, Yoko said she felt like she knew the girl. Then, for some reason, Ayumi said that she had more to say about the dream, but she wanted to go to the school first. We went there together, and Ayumi said that the story from Yoko's dream sounded exactly like a rumor that gets passed around the school. This made Ayumi realize that the ghost story might have been the thing Yoko was investigating before she died. Ayumi left to ask around, and I decided to hang around outside and talk with the students to find out more information. They retold the ghost stories of a girl covered in blood who lurks behind people when they are alone. Wow, Sakamoto wasn't kidding when he said that high school ghost stories were the big inspiration this time around, huh? After asking if anything actually happened in this school's past, the students directed me to an art teacher named Mr. Kumada, since he apparently knew a lot about the school. So I went to see him next and I inquired more about the ghost story. He said that it arose from a situation where a female student of the school went missing 15 years ago. Apparently another student recently came to ask about this story too, and after I asked if it was Yoko, he said that it was likely her, but he wasn't entirely sure for some reason. Well, I guess that was all the info I could gather so far, so I went back to the Itsugi detective agency to summarize my findings. Like the first title, there are sections like this spread throughout the game that serve as sort of breakpoints between investigations. After telling Itsugi what I knew about the ghost story, he told me that he had to leave urgently to help a friend on a case that required his immediate attention, and he left the Yoko case entirely to me for now. Before leaving, he gave me Yoko's student ID that we found at the river. So, I'm gonna be honest, I was having a bit of a hard time getting into this game at first. The only lead I had so far was that the victim was investigating a ghost story at the school. I guess I just have different preferences from Sakamoto, as I found the murder surrounding the inheritance dispute of the first game to be a more interesting hook. Anyway, the next day I went to the school and inquired more about Yoko using her picture from the ID. One of the students told me that he recently saw Yoko behind the old school building a few days ago. So I went there next. Immediately I noticed that a suspicious part of the wall had recently been repainted. Strange. Well, I couldn't figure out much else, so I started to investigate around the school some more, and I still couldn't find anything useful. Then, after going back to the old school building and investigating, a dude popped up out of nowhere. Oh, what the heck even triggered this guy to appear? This was kind of an issue with the first game too. Sometimes you're just wandering around checking everything twice over until something finally changes. Anyway, this guy's name was Tazaki, and he had been the janitor at the school for 20 years. He tried to shoo me away at first, but after I revealed that I was a detective searching for info about Yoko, he tensed up and started acting super strange. His eyes went wide and he said that he suddenly was too busy to talk. Suspicious. Too suspicious, really. After this, I went back to the front of the school and saw Ayumi strutting around in all her pixelated glory. I decided to follow her. She went to a hallway that had a big mirror at the end of it. This mirror is the perfect size to suddenly notice someone standing behind you. Ayumi said that she confirmed that Yoko, starting about a week ago, was indeed investigating the ghost story, although she wondered how this could even be connected to her murder at all. My thoughts exactly, Ayumi. Ayumi then recalled the time soon after Yoko started investigating the story. She said that Yoko appeared behind her next to this mirror, and then Yoko said that the girl who stands behind might be behind Ayumi right now. This made my character wonder if Yoko was implying that she herself was the girl who stands behind. After this, a staff meeting ended, which meant I could go ask Kamada more questions about Yoko. I went to his classroom next. I first asked about the weird janitor though, and I figured out that some time ago, the janitor repaired that suspicious spot on the wall. After showing him the ID, I found out that Yoko was indeed the one who inquired about the missing student recently, and then Kamada told me more about the story of the missing girl from 15 years ago. Her name was Shinobu Asakawa, and apparently the rumors say she got caught up in some kind of incident. I'm not even really sure what this vague wording implies, but it played an ominous jingle here, so it must be important. Kamada then suddenly said he wanted to go home, so I decided to head back to the detective agency myself. Here, Utsugi told me that the case he was working on involved the murder of a man named Genjiro Kaneda. There was a suspect that might have been involved, but several days after the investigation started, he was found dead by suicide. Additionally, there was a person who was seen the day at the scene of the crime, Shinobu Asakawa, the high school girl who went missing 15 years ago. That's right, it looks like our cases might be connected after all. Hearing this, I decided to head back to the police station to learn more about this Genjiro Kaneda, the man who was murdered 15 years ago. Here I met with Maruyama, the primary detective on the Kaneda case. Kaneda owned a bar, and his death was caused by excessive bleeding from being stabbed with a knife. Due to the nature of the murder, Maruyama suspected that the murder was done by someone with a grudge. It turned out that on the side, Kaneda loaned a lot of money to people with harsh interest rates. He was a swindler who brought harm to many people. Kaneda also had a 16-year-old son named Goro, who had become quite the playboy since his father's death. Apparently, Kaneda's bar was a popular hangout spot for delinquents, and it was near Ushimitsu High School, so Goro brought home a lot of girls from there. Shinobu, the girl who disappeared, was one such girl, and she was at Kaneda's house on the night of the murder. They found blood that matched Shinobu's near the house, and at this point, Maruyama suspects that Shinobu is already dead. Basically, the running theory is that Shinobu witnessed the murder of Kaneda, and the murderer chased after her, either killing her or leaving her injured. However, Maruyama said there was another possibility, that Shinobu herself was the murderer. That being said, he still thought Shinobu was innocent and the killer was someone else. The only other clue was that when Goro arrived home, the murder was already done, and he saw a black car drive off. After hearing about all this, I asked about the suspect that was found dead. Maruyama confirmed that there was indeed a suspect that committed suicide after the death of Kaneda. This man was apparently called Teruhiko Uchida, and he was the owner of a small factory in town. Kaneda, through his cruel loans, took control of the factory from Uchida, so Uchida had a motive to kill him. However, when they went to question him, they found that he had been missing for a few days, and then they found him dead. The running theory was that Uchida murdered Kaneda, then committed suicide, but there just wasn't enough supporting evidence to say for sure. Anyway, that's all he knew about the case, and since the statute of limitations for this case was about to run out, he called Utsugi for help closing it out. I went back to the detective agency after this, although Utsugi appeared to be out. Alright, like my video on the first game, let's create a chart of all the characters so far. We've still got more characters to go, but we've got a lot of info now. For starters, we have myself, a young boy who's been separated from his parents, and I work alongside Utsugi, who's currently caught up in another case that is connected to Ushimitsu High School. 15 years ago, a man named Genjiro Kaneda was murdered, and the primary suspect for his murder, Teruhiko Uchida, committed suicide. Kaneda had a playboy son named Goro, and Goro knew Shinobu Asakawa, a girl from Ushimitsu High School. Shinobu seemed to be involved in the murder somehow, and she went missing immediately after. Apart from this case, I'm investigating the recent murder of Yoko, a girl from the same high school. I've met her mother, but she doesn't seem to have a whole lot of leads. There are 4 people from the school I've met so far. First, there's Ayumi, a close friend of Yoko who's helping me investigate the death of her friend. At the beginning, I briefly met Hibino, Yoko's homeroom teacher, and he seemed especially distraught after seeing Yoko's body. There was also an extremely suspicious janitor named Tazaki, who, some time ago, repaired a strange spot of the wall on the old school building. We've also got Mr. Kumada, the art teacher, and he's been around the school for a while. Kumada said that soon after Shinobu disappeared, ghost stories started to pop up about the girl who stands behind, and Yoko was investigating this story just before her death. Alright, that's all for now. Got any suspicions yet? Anyway, after summarizing his findings, my character wondered if the missing link to these stories is that Yoko discovered that the real culprit of the old Kaneda case was not actually Uchida, and as a result, she was killed by the real murderer after discovering too much. Okay, finally, now the story's getting somewhere. My character decided to go back to the school to see if Yoko had indeed been investigating Kaneda's case. I found nothing here and went to see Yoko's mom instead. Here, I found a notebook left by Yoko, and inside was a copy of a newspaper article about Kaneda's murder. So, she did discover Shinobu's connection to Kaneda's case, just like we did. Then, my character decided to go back to the high school to investigate and look for more clues. After talking to various random students back and forth, Kumada suddenly appeared in the art room. I told him all about my findings so far, and he kind of just barely responded to it. Weird. Well, I didn't get a whole lot of good info from him, so I went back outside to talk to the students, and they said that the first person to witness the girl who stands behind was the biology teacher at the school, Ms. Hayama, although these days Hayama denies ever seeing her. After talking to Kumada some more, I learned that Hayama used to be a student here before becoming a teacher, so if she was the first person to talk about the girl who stands behind, it was likely while she was still a student. So, Kumada then fetched Hayama so I could talk to her about it. Hayama knew about the Kaneda case, and even its connection to the girl who stands behind, but she denied being the person who started the rumor, although she was stuttering suspiciously while denying it. I kind of got stuck here for a bit. I kept swapping who I was asking questions to, but they both never said anything new. To trigger the next piece of dialogue, I had to select the option to look at Kumada while I was talking to Hayama. Yeah, these games could just be kind of obtuse like that sometimes. All this did was cause the 2 teachers to leave, but then Hayama suddenly came back once Kumada was gone. She confessed that she was indeed the one who started the rumors, but she didn't want the other teachers to know that she spread the story. So she shared what happened to her 15 years ago. Late on the night that Kaneda was murdered, Hayama returned to the school to get a homework printout she had forgotten. She suddenly heard a voice, and when she turned her head, she saw a blood-covered girl in the window. After her initial shock, the girl in the window suddenly vanished. Hayama ran away in a panic, and to this day, Hayama believes that what she saw must have been Shinobu's ghost. After I asked if the girl in the window looked like Shinobu, Hayama said she wasn't certain, but the girl was definitely wearing their school's uniform. Hayama also told me that she recently had told this whole story to Yoko not long before she was killed, and now everyone was saying Yoko was killed by the curse of the girl who stands behind. Hayama also revealed that she recently heard Yoko and Tazaki, the janitor, arguing about something. Guess I'm going to talk to him next. No matter what I did, he kept dodging my questions and it was clear he was hiding something. After I pressed him for an alibi, Ayumi showed up because she heard us yelling. Ayumi then said some of the townspeople saw an older man that looked like Tazaki acting suspiciously around the same time as Yoko's death. Ayumi, I don't know if it's a good idea to have this conversation right in front of him. He got even more stressed out after this and kicked us out of his room. Ayumi wondered what was going on with the janitor, and she even said that he was usually a nice person. Oh, and she said she recently saw an unfamiliar man hanging around the school. Wonder who that is. After this, we decided to head to the faculty room together. I wanted to talk to Hibino some more since I hadn't seen him since we found Yoko's body. When we went there, Hibino looked like he was still in shock and hadn't completely recovered. When I tried to ask about Yoko, he said he wasn't in a good state of mind to answer any of my questions. Man, just what was this guy's relationship to Yoko? After learning nothing, a new character was introduced. It was an older man who looked to be around 60 years old. It turns out this guy was the principal and his name was Urabe. Urabe and Hibino had business together, so there was nothing else to investigate here. Ayumi said that she really wanted to help me find the culprit, so much so that she even wanted to come to the detective agency with me. However, my character turned her down, saying that it was too dangerous. Dejected, Ayumi left. After this, I went back to the detective agency to collect my thoughts. I wondered if the bloody girl Hayama saw on the night of Kanada's murder actually was Shinobu, since it would line up with the timeline. Then, Utsugi called and told me that there was another suspect in the Kanada case that was connected to the high school. He gave me the chance to guess here, but ultimately, guessing is all it was. If you're wrong, it doesn't even penalize you or anything. I had to enter the name in Japanese, and Sudgy has a list on his GitHub of all the Japanese names of the characters. Unfortunately, I'm apparently bad at understanding hiragana, as I goofed up somehow and entered Tazaki's name incorrectly, despite the fact that this was the right guess. Whoops. Well, it turns out that Tazaki had a lot of debt to Kanada, and he was even seen arguing with Kanada a few days before the murder. However, he had been dropped as a suspect because he had an alibi. He was seen fixing the school wall around the same time as the murder. Also, it was Urabe, the principal, that had Tazaki repairing the wall, and he was the one that witnessed Tazaki working on it. Now, this may make Urabe seem a bit suspicious, but it didn't seem like Urabe had any connections to Kanada at all. My character pointed out that it was strange that the wall was repaired the same day Shinobu went missing, and he even wondered if there was something hidden behind it. Are they suggesting Shinobu's body was hidden back there? Alright, a few more important characters have been introduced, so let's do some more updates. We met another teacher named Hayama, and she was a student at Ushimitsu High School before working there. She saw a bloody girl in the window on the same night as Kanada's murder, and she's the one who started the rumor of the girl who stands behind. I've also met Urabe, the principal. He seems to have no connection to the Kanada case, but he ordered Tazaki to repair the wall on the old school building the same night Shinobu went missing. Speaking of, Tazaki has been acting extremely suspicious, and he seems to be hiding something. Oh, I've also heard about an unfamiliar stranger hanging around the school lately. I've only just briefly mentioned him so far, but he's been brought up a few times when I ask around looking for clues, so he's probably important in some way. The next day, I went to talk to Tazaki, and I asked more questions about the wall he repaired. He confirmed the times he worked on it and the fact that the principal saw him working on it. He admitted that he did indeed have debt to Kanada, but he insisted he was not the murderer. After being shooed out again, I asked around about the janitor and the principal, but the students had nothing but positive things to say about both of them. After this, I got stuck for a bit. I kept wandering around and pestering Tazaki, but I wasn't figuring out much. He had a bag I tried to snoop and look into, but he grabbed it and took off before I could see what was inside. Eventually, I went back to the faculty room and heard about another creepy story from one of the teachers there. He said, "At night, when you're playing the Famicom alone, you hear someone's voice behind you. Turning around, you see your mother standing there telling you to study." Haha, real funny. After wandering around some more, my character randomly remembered that Hayama said that no one else was at the school the night she saw the girl who stands behind, but that doesn't line up with what the janitor and the principal said, since they were also supposedly there that night. Something doesn't add up about the janitor's alibi. Maybe they just missed each other? So after getting stuck for a while again, I was able to convince Hayama to come back to the old school building to discuss matters further. When I told her Tazaki's alibi, she agreed that Tazaki must have repaired the wall that night since she noticed it looked bad before she left but good as new the next day. However, she said that Tazaki must have repaired the wall after she left. This meant there was a slight discrepancy in their stories. Tazaki said he started plastering the wall at 9, but Hayama insisted that he couldn't have gotten started until after 10. You know, for a 15-year-old memory, I'm surprised she remembered the time so well. Anyway, as we were talking, a suspicious man that looked just like Tazaki was eavesdropping on us, and when I noticed him, he suddenly took off and left. Unable to discover where he went, I went back to the office, and there Ayumi had been waiting for me. She was strongly suspecting Tazaki and wanted to know for sure since she was adamant about finding Yoko's killer. While we were talking, Ayumi said she'd make us coffee, but when I took a drink, I started to lose consciousness. What? Ayumi drugged me? As I faded away, Ayumi apologized profusely, and then the game ended. That's right, remember how I said this released in 2 parts? Back in the day, you had to wait a little over a month to figure out what happened next. Of course, I didn't have to wait at all, so I popped in the next disc, and Part 2 of Famicom Detective Club Part 2 began. It opened with my character waking up still in the detective agency, and there was a bottle of sleeping pills on the floor. So I guess Ayumi didn't drug me to take me somewhere at least. I then found a note left by Ayumi. It said, "I'm sorry, I have to stop the culprit at any cost. I might never see you again. I'm sorry for acting in my own selfish interest. Goodbye." After seeing this, I immediately left to search for Ayumi. I checked back at Tazaki's apartment, but it didn't seem like either of them had been there. Then I decided to wander the town. Oh boy, this next part was like that maze puzzle from the first game, although honestly, it's even worse. I wandered around a bunch and asked if anyone knew where Ayumi was, but no one had seen her. I didn't show any map on my stream this time, but basically it looked like this. What you actually had to do here was really stupid. Basically, I had to go to 3 random spots on the map in sequence to see specific messages about people who had recently seen a girl in a school uniform. I figured it out by complete chance, but according to Sudgy, you have to first go to the top right, then the bottom left, then the top left in that exact order. Yeesh. Finally, I found the girl in the school uniform, but it wasn't Ayumi. Fortunately, this new girl told me that she saw Ayumi downtown by the train station, so I went there next. Here, I got harassed by a random drunk guy for a while, and I had to get help from a dude promoting a club. The club promoter then called out to a couple of men, and when I looked at who he was calling to, I saw the principal talking with a suspicious man I had never seen before. However, before I could investigate more, Yoko's mom suddenly showed up. She was also looking for Ayumi, and I told her everything I knew. After failing to find Ayumi downtown, I went back to Tazaki's home and ran into one of his neighbors. The neighbor was holding a package for Tazaki, and on the package I discovered that it was sent by his family from a small fishing village. It turns out Ayumi had seen this address too and immediately left when she saw it, likely meaning she went out there to chase after Tazaki. So I went there myself, hoping I wasn't too late. Here, I met Tazaki's mother, and she was worried that Tazaki had done something again. Again? Is this implying he was responsible for the murder of Kaneda and Yoko? Then a random man showed up and told me he saw Ayumi chasing after Tazaki towards a cliff. When I arrived, Tazaki was there, holding Ayumi in place with a knife. When I tried to persuade him, he told me not to approach him as it was already over for him. He threatened to kill both Ayumi and himself if I went any closer. To beat him, I had to do that tricky thing they did in the first game. I had to select the stop investigating option, which is usually used to save and quit the game. When I selected this, I told Tazaki that I would stop investigating the murders if he would just let Ayumi go. Then a sudden gust of wind distracted him and I lunged forward. Tazaki saw me though and swung the knife at Ayumi, but stopped before hitting her. He couldn't bring himself to kill someone. Then Tazaki shared what really happened to him that night. He wasn't working on the wall, at least not at first. He was heading over to Kaneda's that very moment to apologize after a recent argument about his debt. Then Tazaki heard Kaneda getting murdered. He was terrified because he knew without an alibi he would become a prime suspect, so he quickly went back to the school to repair the wall to remove any suspicion on him. However, he still needed someone else to back up his story, so the next day he told the principal everything. The principal believed his story and decided to lie to the detectives to cover for Tazaki. He said this was the second time the principal believed in him like this, as he was fired from a previous job for assaulting someone while gambling. This was the prior incident mentioned by his mother. Anyway, the principal believed in Tazaki despite his past failings, so he hired him to work at the school. Unfortunately, Tazaki got into gambling again, which is why he owed debts to Kaneda. Tazaki said the reason why he had been hiding the truth was not only to protect himself, but also to protect the principal. He didn't want the principal to be seen in a bad light if it was revealed that he lied to the detectives. After arguing with Ayumi and threatening to kill anyone who followed him around, Tazaki had run off to his hometown to escape it all. He apologized to us and asked for forgiveness. Ayumi believed him, and I guess that's good enough because no one ever brings up the fact that the school janitor just held one of the students at knife point ever again. Ayumi also apologized for drugging me, but my character said that he was just glad she was safe. After going back home, she apologized some more, saying she drugged me to keep me safe because she was worried about me. To reassure her, I made a fool of myself by showing off my karate moves, but my fly was down the whole time. Real smooth. My character mused that while it was embarrassing, it was the first time he saw Ayumi laugh. Anyway, after I failed to show off, we went back to the school together. Ayumi said that I should meet with someone called Hitomi Kawai, a student who was friends with Yoko. After wandering for a bit and chatting with the janitor, Hayama showed up telling me that the principal wanted to talk to me. I met with him and we discussed the case a bit together. Throughout it all, the principal first and foremost really seemed to care about other people. It didn't match the man I saw downtown the other day, so I mentioned that I saw him there. However, before I could press into it further, we were interrupted by a phone call and the principal told me that our discussion would have to wait for another time. I went back to the faculty room, and here a teacher told me that the strange man everyone had been seeing lately was someone in his 30s. There was pretty much only one person in the story so far that this could be, so I already had figured it out, but I'll keep it a secret for now. Then I ran into Hibino, Yoko's homeroom teacher that I saw at the start of the game. I asked him some questions, and his expression changed when I brought up Kanada's case from 15 years ago. Other than that, though, I couldn't figure out anything interesting from him. I decided to head back to the principal's office after this, and through the window I saw the man that was with the principal the other night. I went out to talk with him, but by the time I got there, he was already gone. Strange. Is this the mysterious man people had been seeing around the school lately? Then suddenly, this weird delinquent dude with no eyebrows showed up. Apparently, he thought I was the stranger that had been hanging around the school and he wasn't happy to see me. He threatened to fight me, but after I told him my karate rank, he backed down. Suddenly, Ayumi showed up and explained that I was indeed a detective, much to the shock of the delinquent. Ayumi once again expressed her resolve to help with this case, and since the delinquent overheard everything, he wanted to help too by keeping Ayumi safe while she investigates. Ayumi then revealed that the delinquent was Hitomi, the close friend of Yoko. So there's a bit of a joke here with Hitomi's name. The name Hitomi is associated with beauty, and kawaii is a last name that sounds similar to kawaii, an adjective for things that are cute. Now, clearly Hitomi is neither of these, but that's the point. Anyway, it looks like we've got another friend to help us on the case. Later that night, I decided to head back to the downtown area to see if I could learn more about the principal and this mysterious stranger he had been meeting. I ran into the owner of the nearby club, and he knew a bit about Goro, Kanada's son. The owner explained that Goro was in high spirits after receiving his father's inheritance, and he didn't even seem to care that his father was dead. In fact, Goro wasn't even Kanada's real son. He was adopted. Some rumors popped up that Goro was the one who killed his father, but apparently he was still very well off even before his father's death, so the accusations against him were seen as baseless. The club owner said that apparently Goro had recently squandered his fortune though, and he was asking around for money. After this, I went home and collected my thoughts, and the next day I went back to the school. After discussing things with Ayumi, some nearby students started to gossip about how close we seemed. After this, I met Hibino in the faculty office. He seemed to get really defensive whenever I suggested there was something suspicious surrounding the principal. He also admitted that he did know about Kanada's case from 15 years ago, but he was not interested in talking about it, or even thinking about it. Then he stormed off. Man, every time I see this guy, I get nothing useful out of him. I met with Hitomi at the old school building after this, and he discovered that the mysterious man started to appear immediately after Yoko died. However, Hitomi figured that if this stranger was the murderer, it doesn't seem like he'd want to keep coming back here suspiciously like this. He then pulled out a cigarette and started smoking. I hope it's not laced with cyanide. My character chastised him for smoking while in high school and ripped a cigarette from his mouth. Hitomi admitted that he was a big idiot and he ran off in shame. What a weird dude. After this, I met with Komada, the art teacher, and then we learned something super strange. There was a painting of an old student at the high school, and she looked just like Yoko. Then it turned out that the model for this painting was Shinobu Asakawa. That's right, the girl who just died recently looks exactly like the girl who disappeared 15 years ago. Does that mean Yoko was the girl who stands behind the whole time? Well, Komada told me who painted it all those years ago, so I went to go visit the artist next. Ryoko was her name, and she was a friend of Shinobu back in the day. Ryoko said that Shinobu used to be a quiet and shy girl, but she suddenly started to be more loud and flamboyant after meeting Goro. Ryoko then told me a strange story. 3 weeks ago, Shinobu showed up at her door, still looking like a high school student. But it was actually just Yoko, who for some reason looked exactly like Shinobu. Yoko apparently acted just like Shinobu even, and Yoko mysteriously said that Shinobu must still be at Ushimitsu High School. Man, Yoko was sure acting weird just before her death. It's gotta be important, right? After this, I learned something interesting. Shinobu was friends with a boy whose last name was Uchida. Now, you may not remember this, but Uchida was the last name of the man who committed suicide after Kanada was found dead. Apparently, this young Uchida boy even transferred schools soon after Shinobu went missing. After this, I went back to collect my thoughts. The main thing my character surmised this time was that if the mysterious man hanging around the school was indeed 30 years old, it's possible he's either Goro or Uchida's son. Alright, let's update the character page again. I've met Hitomi, another student and friend of Yoko, and he's helping me solve the case. I learned that Kanada's son, Goro, was actually adopted, and recently his fortune had run out. Also, it turns out that Uchida, the man who committed suicide after Kanada's murder, had a son that was close to Shinobu, but he transferred away soon after Shinobu went missing. Finally, Urabe, the principal, had been meeting with someone mysterious lately, and he's the strange man that people have been seeing around the school. We don't know for sure yet, but it seems likely that the man is either Goro or Uchida's son. The next day, I met with Ayumi, and she discovered why Yoko and Shinobu looked so similar. They were cousins. Ayumi said that Yoko had no prior knowledge that her cousin went missing because they were estranged. Anyway, Ayumi commented that while Yoko stood behind her at the mirror that one time, she looked especially like Shinobu's portrait in the painting. Wow, they're really playing up this whole spooky angle, aren't they? Honestly, at this point, I thought Shinobu might have been alive all this time and had swapped places with Yoko, but you'd think Ayumi would have been able to tell considering Shinobu would be 15 years older than Yoko. After this, I talked with Komada about the Uchida boy who knew Shinobu, but he couldn't remember anything. He suggested I ask the principal, but unfortunately, Urabe was away on a business trip. That's some suspicious timing considering all the weird meetings lately. I wandered around the school some more, and I also learned that the principal had recently sold his house. I brought up Urabe's move to Komada, and while he said the timing did seem sudden, the house was quite big, and Urabe lived alone. Apparently, Urabe used to have a wife, but she was weak and died after giving birth. Does that mean the principal has a child this whole time that I've never heard about? Kinda suspicious since we recently heard that Goro was adopted too. After this, Kamado let it slip that he knew someone at the school that had a black car, but he didn't want to spill the beans for some reason. If you remember, Goro saw a black car driving off 15 years ago when his father was killed. Komada also told me that a strange student in glasses was looking for me recently. After this, I went outside and chatted with Hayama again. She said that earlier that day, while Hibino was helping an injured student, they saw the girl who stands behind. At this point, even the teachers were starting to think that Shinobu was haunting the school. I got stuck here for a bit, but eventually I called for Hitomi behind the school, and it turns out he was the student in glasses that was looking for me. He was wearing non-prescription glasses and a wig. He even drew on fake eyebrows. I guess after I grilled him for being a delinquent, he was trying to turn over a new leaf, but this might be taking it too far. I found the matches he dropped after he quit smoking, and they had branding from a bar called Sambora. I asked Hitomi about it, and he said he just picked up the matches after the mysterious man who hangs around the school dropped them. Hitomi said that Bar Sambora was in the neighboring town. Wait, this means the mysterious man might visit that bar, so I decided to head over to the neighboring town to investigate. At first, the bartender didn't want to tell me anything because I was just a kid. I even went back to the school and got Hitomi to come with me, but this didn't seem to help. Eventually, I yanked off Hitomi's glasses, which made the bartender recognize him. Apparently, the bartender used to take care of Hitomi during middle school. This caused the bartender to open up to me finally, and he told me a bit about Goro. Apparently, Goro did indeed squander his fortune, but just recently he's gotten a bunch of money again somehow. Also, he recalled Goro saying something weird recently. Goro said, "I know who killed my father, and it's thanks to him that I can drink." Finally, the bartender told me where Goro lives. Okay, I'm not sure why he knew that, but it's time to finally meet this Goro guy. However, when I got there, I saw something terrible through the window. Someone was being stabbed. When I went inside, I found Goro's body on the couch, and my character recognized him as the mysterious man hanging around the school that was meeting with the principal. Goro was holding a fountain pen in his hand, and on it were the initials TU. After going back to the detective agency, the game had me deduce which two characters had initials like that. They were Teruhiko Uchida, the man who committed suicide after the death of Kaneda 15 years ago, and Tadashi Urabe, the principal. It seemed more likely to me that the principal was the owner of the pen since he was meeting with Goro regularly. Alright, let's do a quick update to the character page. We now know this mysterious man was indeed Goro, but before I could ask him any questions, he was murdered. His murderer right now was a complete mystery, but it seems likely that whoever it is connected to the previous murders. I went to the school the next day, but it was apparently a holiday, so no one was there. Well, almost no one. Kamado likes to paint at the school on his days off. Once we went to his art room, he started to act super weird. He said, "No one will notice if something happens to me," and I found that the door was locked shut. Kamada then started to laugh evilly. Eventually, I got the door open, and Kamada said he was just trolling me because I dared to suspect the principal might be the culprit. What the heck? This guy can be so weird at times. Anyway, I had to once again pick the stop investigating option to make my character get mad at Kamada for messing with me while I was working on a serious case. This just made us part ways and go home. What a weird section. After this, I got a call from that painter friend of Shinobu. She said she was in contact with someone named Sayaka, a woman who went to middle school with Shinobu and the son of Uchida, and she wanted me to come over to meet her. However, when I got there, Sayaka hadn't arrived yet. While waiting, I learned from Ryoko that the principal had a really nice black car. Dun dun! If you remember, Goro saw a black car driving off just after his father was murdered. Sayaka was taking so darn long to arrive that I decided to call the bar from before, and the bartender said that everyone there was in shock about Goro's death, so I should come visit. So I just up and left Ryoko's place to visit the bar again. Everyone was indeed shocked, but I found nothing useful here. I wandered back and forth quite a bit trying to figure out what to do. It was pretty dumb too. I had to show Ryoko the matches from way earlier to tell her that I was going to visit the bar. What the heck? But I was already hopping back and forth between the two. Why was it necessary for me to show her the matches to finally advance the dialogue at the bar? Anyway, after this, the bartender finally told me that around 2 weeks ago, about the same time as Yoko's murder, Goro randomly stood up after seeing something on the TV at 9 p.m. He then said, "Hehehe, looks like my luck is coming back again," and then he left the bar. Unfortunately, the sound wasn't on, so the bartender had no idea what Goro even saw. After this, I got a call from Ryoko saying that Sayaka had finally arrived, so I turned around and headed back to Ryoko's place. Here, Sayaka told me the nickname they had for Uchida's son, Ta-chan. That's another TU then, isn't it? Sayaka said that Ta-chan and Shinobu were friends since they were children, and she said that Ta-chan probably even had feelings for Shinobu. Sayaka also said she heard about Yoko's death on the 9 o'clock news, and they interviewed Urabe at that time too. This made my character wonder if seeing the principal on TV is what caused Goro to become confident at the bar 2 weeks ago. My character then surmised that the principal might have sold his house and given the money to Goro, which would explain his sudden financial turnaround and all the meetings they were having lately. After this, I took a look at one of their old school books to get a look at Ta-chan, and he looked exactly like Hibino, the teacher at Usimitsu High School. His first name was Tatsuya, and if you remember, he transferred schools after Shinobu's death. Why the heck did he come back? And why did he change his last name to Hibino? So, the next day, I decided to talk to Hibino to figure out what was going on. He confirmed that he was indeed Tatsuya, and he took his mother's last name after transferring schools so that he wouldn't be associated with the suspected killer of Kaneda. Hibino clearly blamed Kaneda for his father's suicide, and he exclaimed that there was no way his father was the one who killed Kaneda. He also said that Urabe, the principal, was a bit more involved with this story than it initially seemed. Urabe and Uchida were friends since their school days, and Urabe helped Hibino a lot after his father's death, which is why Hibino ended up becoming a teacher at the school. He started saying a lot of negative things about Goro and Kaneda, and my character even made a comment about how clear it was Hibino hated them. I brought up the fact that the principal's car was seen on the night of Kaneda's murder, which caused Hibino to defend the principal insistently. He stormed off saying he wouldn't let anyone insult the principal. My character surmised that Hibino clearly had a motive to kill either Kaneda or Goro, but there were a lot of signs pointing towards the principal being the murderer too. After this, I ran into Ayumi, who said the current weather was looking similar to the weather on the day when Yoko acted strange by the mirror, and she wondered if the girl who stands behind was really still at this school. Then, the music started to get ominous. Uh-oh, something big is coming, isn't it? My character thought about Yoko's strange words to Ayumi that day. He wondered if the principal drove Shinobu back to school and perhaps her body was still being hidden somewhere there. Then I talked to Hayama. Recently, on the same day Goro was killed, Hayama tried to get a hold of the principal but was unable to reach him. Furthermore, when she pressed further into it, she found that he had never made plans to go on a business trip to begin with. She then said someone just recently parked their car in front of the school gate, and it was a familiar black car. After this, we wondered if Shinobu's body was behind the plastered wall. I talked to the janitor, and while he said there was no such thing behind the wall when he plastered it, it's possible someone could have removed it and replastered the wall before it dried. He even said the next day he noticed that there were markings suggesting that someone else used his tools besides him. I went to Utsugi after this to ask for help getting rid of the wall. When I arrived, Utsugi told me they discovered who owned the fountain pen, and he said it was someone Goro was blackmailing. Then I had to surmise the owner of the fountain pen. I correctly guessed that it was Urabe, the principal, since it seemed clear that Goro blackmailed the principal into selling his house. Because they knew who the fountain pen belonged to, the police were looking for Urabe at this very moment. My character then wondered if the whole reason Urabe gave false testimony for Tazaki was to cover his own tracks. The only strange part was that Urabe didn't seem to have any motive for killing Kaneda in the first place 15 years ago. Then I suddenly received a phone call from a mysterious man whose voice sounded familiar. He told me that most people didn't know it, but Urabe used to help Kaneda with his scams. The mysterious man said he always hated how much of a hypocrite Urabe was. I then got worried about Ayumi being at the school with Urabe, so I quickly went there to make sure she was safe. Thankfully, she had been with Hibino the whole time. I'm not sure why all three of us decided to do this, but we went to the principal's office to see if Urabe was there. Well, he was indeed there, but he was dead. Hibino was distraught, and we saw a note left behind by the principal. It was a confession letter. It confirmed that he did work alongside Kaneda, and he killed Kaneda after he became a hindrance. Since Shinobu witnessed the event, Urabe chased her in his car, and after hitting her, he fled from the scene. Then, in his letter, he confessed to killing Goro and Yoko since they both knew too much. He apologized to everyone who looked up to him, and he admitted the grave errors of his ways. After reading the note, my character realized that the voice I heard on the phone was Urabe himself confessing. Urabe had committed suicide. Hibino then started to exclaim that there was no way the principal was the murderer. It was all lies, because Hibino himself was the killer. He turned around holding a knife and told me everything. Oh, before I go on, this is the music part I wanted to mention earlier. Apparently, throughout the whole game, they intentionally made the music quieter so people would keep the music loud. And then, during this scene, they cranked up the volume to make the reveal more shocking. So the real story went like this. Hibino got a final call from Teruhiko Uchida, his father, just before he committed suicide, and this is what drove Hibino to kill Kaneda. Okay, before we go on, I actually want to complain a little bit, although maybe I'm just salty. Way back at the start, the detective told me clearly that Hibino's father committed suicide after the death of Kaneda, but that doesn't really line up quite right with what actually happened. This threw me off a bit because even though Hibino clearly had a motive, it didn't make sense to me that Hibino would kill Kaneda before his father's death. I even verified this wasn't a mistranslated line by Sudgy, as even the official remake said the same thing. I guess there are some ways you could explain it all, but I kinda just feel like these are some important details for a mystery game to just gloss over. Alright, salty rant over. Time to get back to the game. So, Hibino said that Shinobu witnessed him killing Kaneda, and after running out in a panic, she was hit accidentally by the principal, who was arriving at the scene in his black car. Urabe took the two students back to the school, and while they were there, Shinobu regained consciousness and went to the window, which explains the bloody girl Hayama saw all those years ago. Hibino panicked, and, worried that he'd be discovered, he smashed Shinobu's head with a vase, killing her. Mortified, Hibino ran back home. The next day, the principal told Hibino to forget about everything, implying he was the one that hid Shinobu's body. But 2 weeks ago, after seeing Urabe on TV, Goro started to blackmail the principal. After this, Hibino chased us into the hallway. He said that Yoko approached him, accusing him of killing Kaneda 15 years ago. When Hibino saw how similar Yoko looked to Shinobu, he panicked, thinking that Shinobu herself had come back to haunt him. In a terrified state, he choked Yoko and killed her too, but he ran off and had no idea what happened to Yoko's body. Then he held up a knife, saying that he was going to kill us too. We dodged, and Hibino instead shattered the mirror. After Hibino turned around to face us, the skeleton of Shinobu fell from behind the mirror onto Hibino's back. That's right, the body was behind the mirror the whole time. Then Utsugi and the police arrived at the scene and arrested Hibino. Ayumi realized that the day Yoko said the girl who stands behind must be right behind Ayumi, she wasn't talking about herself. She was talking about the mirror. So why didn't she just say so in the first place? Anyway, Utsugi congratulated me on figuring out who the real killer was, and a few missing details were explained. Remember how Urabe's wife died in childbirth? It turns out that child was Hibino, and since Urabe would be a single parent, he instead entrusted his child to Uchida, his close friend. So, this whole time, the principal was trying to protect his own son by covering up the murders. Urabe was the one who hid Shinobu's body behind the mirror, and he was the one who threw Yoko's body into the river. In fact, Urabe didn't even know Kaneda personally, and the whole confession letter was a lie to cover for Hibino. Finally, the fountain pen was a gift from Urabe to Hibino, and the initials TU were meant to invoke Tatsuya Urabe, as a reminder that Tatsuya was an Urabe and not a Hibino. However, there was one final detail that's kind of strange. They said that after investigating the body, they found no evidence that Hibino ever hit Shinobu hard enough on the head to kill her, and she must have simply died when the principal hit her with his car by mistake. Does this mean Hibino hallucinated when he saw her body get up at school? But that doesn't explain how Hayama saw her bloody body either. Does that actually mean Shinobu's ghost appeared for a moment? The game leaves it open for you to decide, I guess. Oh, the game also explains that these events cause Ayumi to decide to work at the Utsugi Detective Agency as an assistant, alongside the main character, setting up the events of the first game. With that, my time with Famicom Detective Club Part 2, The Girl Who Stands Behind, was complete. On to the review. Well, you may remember that I said a lot of people like this one more than the first game, but I don't entirely agree. Now, they ultimately are pretty similar. Both have engaging murder mystery stories, but both kind of struggle with having obtuse and tedious puzzle solving. In some ways though, the second game wasn't quite as bad at this. I don't feel like I got stuck talking to everyone over and over quite as much as the first game, but I'm not sure I totally like how they solved this problem. Rather than making the correct path forward more logical, they simply just reduced the amount of incorrect places you could go. Now, I think some people will prefer this kind of change, but personally, I don't totally like this approach since it's a step towards removing interactivity from the game. I prefer it when a mystery game embraces the interactive nature of the video game format by allowing you to reason through the way forward. Once you start removing the interactive components, I personally would rather just read a book or watch a movie to tell the mystery instead, since I find that the pacing is better suited for that kind of storytelling. Obviously, the balance between freedom and confusion isn't easy to get right, and I'm not saying it ruined the experience or anything, I just have mixed feelings on how they handled the puzzle solving with this one. Now, let's talk about the story. This may surprise some of you, but I think I like the first game's story a bit more. Now, moment to moment, I would still maybe say this game has the edge. The high school setting allows for more lighthearted, fun moments, and the final dramatic scenes with Hibino were definitely thrilling. But I just don't think I cared for the overall mystery as much in this one. I said it earlier, but I personally found the murder surrounding an inheritance dispute of a wealthy family more engaging than a high school ghost story. Additionally, I really like how there were other major plot twists involving the main character in the first game, and I don't really feel like this one had anything that matched it. Also, maybe I'm just salty that I didn't solve as much on my own this time, but I felt like the second game threw a lot more red herrings at the player, and some don't entirely make sense in retrospect. I've already mentioned my annoyance with the game saying the suicide happened after the initial murder, but there were a few other weird plot points that felt like they mostly just existed to build up the ghost story angle. Why did Yoko start acting like an entirely different person? Why did the game repeatedly say that Yoko looked even more like Shinobu after she started to investigate the story? Why was she so cryptic with Ayumi about the location of the body? Wouldn't she have wanted to tell her best friend what she was discovering? Why did Hibino and an injured student allegedly see the girl who stands behind long after Shinobu and Yoko were dead? Honestly, this game makes more sense if you just accept that Shinobu's spirit did come back from the dead and possess Yoko. Maybe that's what they were going for, but I guess I just like it better in mystery stories when all the loose threads get tied together in the end. Additionally, I kind of thought the whole sequence with the janitor went on for way too long, especially considering it mostly just ended up being a dead end. It was also kind of silly that the main characters just quickly forgave the man who held Ayumi at knife point and threatened to kill her. Obviously, it still had some importance relating to the principal's alibi and all that, but it just felt like a bit much. I don't know. Overall, I kind of felt like with this game, I was just watching the story unfold instead of unraveling it myself, and there were a few plot points I found frustrating. That all being said, I think I'd still place this one close to the first game. I may not like it quite as much, but there were still some positive changes too. Also, despite my gripes, the story was still engaging, and I'm glad I played it. I gave Famicom Detective Club Part 2, The Girl Who Stands Behind, a 6 out of 10, the same score as the first game. With The Girl Who Stands Behind complete, I have now finished 87 out of the 154 NES games in the challenge, meaning I am now 56.49% of the way through all of the NES games. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more of these in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss out on the next one. Also, leave a like if you enjoyed it, since it will help the channel grow and motivate me to continue this series. I hope I will see you in the next step of my quest to beat every Nintendo game.